And I assume, Bert, that you heard what Brewski said on Sunday when he said he wants Bill to walk away at the end of the season.
Yeah, and it's almost like they're trying to get him to do it. I don't know. It just seems like, because Teddy's not just throwing stuff out there. Teddy still talks to people in the organization. He still lives locally.
Bill said he still talks to Bill.
Yeah.
He has a relationship with Bill, as you just said.
So, like, this isn't like somebody who is just like Rodney, for example. Like, Rodney lives in Atlanta. Rodney isn't around a ton. He may still communicate with people, but I mean, he's to some degree disconnected a little bit more,
Sure.
Like, there are lots of guys like that, when they retire, they go live wherever they're going to live. And Teddy's not. Teddy's here. Teddy can get to the stadium in 15 minutes by car, So I think it's significant when you start to hear some of these voices coming out. And I think it illustrates how awkward this is, because this isn't how anybody drew up the departure happening. And I just think the Cowboy and Saint games changed the context of the conversation completely, because it went from we're going to have to figure some stuff out after the year to we can't go forward with this anymore. Like, I think that's what happened, is like it went from you having like a tough, like a little bit of an awkward thing, and like, all right, like, let's see if we can figure this out where it works for everybody, where it's like, can we even have this guy around anymore? And, you're 1-5, you're staring 1-7 in the face. You've got, the Buffalo game to me is interesting because the Patriots can complain about the injuries, right? So they lose Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon. The Bills have two just as significant injuries on defense in Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White. So it's just, you're going to get a real look, like, on Sunday, how far they are away. And then Miami after that, Miami's still playing really well, So, at 1-7, I think the conversation's already in some corners of that building gone to 2024. I think it's going to be more widespread in a couple of weeks unless something pretty crazy happens.
What's pretty crazy?
Which corners?
Well, there's always in every one of these organizations, your scouting department is already working on the next year because they're talking about college players. Well, during the college season, you have to allocate resources to certain areas. Over the next 6 weeks, do you start to go send your scouts to look at the quarterbacks live? Because there's only so many scouts you have, and there are only so many games that you can get live exposure to. So do we start seeing Macro pop up at a USC game or a North Carolina game or a Michigan game or a Texas game? Do you start to see those things? Because teams that are looking at quarterbacks in the draft, right, what do? You every year when a quarterback gets drafted, you hear this stuff, right? Like you get to April and somebody does the backstory of how the quarterback got there, and the guy will be like, oh, yeah, I was at the Texas-Oklahoma game in November, and I saw this on this quarterback, and that's why I liked him,
Yeah.
That's when you're doing this work. So in some corners that the building, you can't wait until 2024. So that's what I mean. Like, I think there's a lot of conversation. And then the trade deadline is the other part of it. How do you approach that? Where are contract negotiations with Kyle Duggar, with Josh Uche, with Mike Owenu? And if they aren't going anywhere, or you aren't going to go to their price, because those guys are, if you're one of those guys now, you are 11 games from free agency, right?
Yep.
All you got to do is stay healthy for another 11 games. So at this point, if you're one of those players and you have like, I think I'm worth this on the open market, why would you take less than that when you've already taken on the amount of injury risk it takes to get to this point? Why wouldn't you just play it out and get to free agency? So they have to factor that into what happens if somebody calls on Uche, what happens if somebody calls on Owenu, what happens if somebody calls on Duggar. These are real things that they've got to sort through over the next few weeks. And again, like, I think it's, do you start to look at the college quarterbacks? Do you start to like consider offers? Because I think it's like really paramount now that you start building up draft capital because the roster has a lot of holes. Is there one position on offense you would say is not a need position right now?
Nope. We said this the other day. Didn't we do this? Like, which position is a must to keep on the roster for next year?
I mean, you could say potentially guard because you just drafted 3 and you've got Nwenu and Strange, but Nwenu is a free agent. So maybe guard's the only one that's not like a need going into the draft. Hunter Henry's up, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Receivers
is up.
Receivers a
Gesicki's
clear
stiff.
need. Tackles a clear need. I mean, like Stevenson's going to
Running
be
back.
Stevenson's going to be going into a contract year,
Zeke's getting old.
right? I mean, Zeke is on a 1-year deal. So,
Right.
like, what do you what need do you go into the 2024
Everything.
offense? What offensive position is not a need? Every single position you could perceive as a need.
Yeah, when you consider the contracts of all these guys.
How many guys on offense? We did that game like who's going to be here in 5 years. How many guys on offense do you like right now? Do you think will be here in 2025?
0. 2025, not a single one.
That's 2 years from now.
I know. I don't know that a single one will be here.
I mean, doesn't that tell you everything you need to know about the state of the team?
Yeah. I mean, they're a bad team. That's
that's
the
why
bottom
I'm
of the
saying-
barrel in the NFL.
so
They're
that's
one of
why
the
I'm
worst 5 or 6 teams in the league. And when you have a team that bad, this is typical, isn't it, Bert?
So that's why
Is this
I'm saying,
totally
that's
unusual
why
for
I'm
a 1 and 5
saying,
team?
like, it has to be a very real consideration starting to dump guys. And even if it's for a 3rd-round pick to Kyle Duggar, even if it's for a 4th-round pick, Josh Uche, you have to start to consider these things because it's like, if we're
Duggar, I'm not moving.
But if we're not going to sign him,
You've got to sign Duggar.
Okay, but-
Bert,
Well, let me ask you this.
Bert, who do they have that's about to hit a second contract that you look at and say, you've got to keep that guy? You just
None.
drafted, developed that guy. You must sign him.
I like
Duggar's,
Duggar. I like Duggar.
Duggar might be the only guy they have that fits that category.
Okay,
Uche
so-
isn't. I mean, Uche's fine, but
Uche's like a designated pass rusher.
if you let him
He's
walk,
like he's a
it's not
third round-
it's not a massive loss.
But here's the thing: if somebody, because he has a premium skill,
yeah,
because he can rush the passer,
yes,
if somebody comes and offers you a 3 or 4, you have to almost
Buffalo.
I think you have to
Basically,
take-
Buffalo loves those kind of guys.
You have to take.
That's why they like. That's why they like Von Miller.
I don't
Because
think
here's the thing
Uche
is,
fits
like,
what they do here. all
There
that
was a
well.
there was a time when, oh, whatever, a 3rd or 4th round pick, who cares? We're not in that time right now.
No, we're not.
That 3rd round pick could be,
What if that 3rd round pick is something that allows you to move up a spot in the 2nd round?
or he could
What,
be,
right? I mean,
or
you
it
got to
could
think
be-
of those types
or it
of
could
draft day scenarios where you're like, hey, I got to move up 2 spots because I really like this 2nd round receiver and I got to jump a team. Well, hey, unload one of the extra thirds to move up the 2
Right.
spots. Like those are the types
Right.
of things that
Or-
it can get you.
Like,
I can get a slot receiver for the next 4 years with my 3rd round pick.
Perfect.
You know what?
Something.
I get
Yes.
Josh Downs, who's like a nice little player for Indianapolis. He can be my slot receiver for the next 4 years on a rookie contract. These are the that. What's worth more, that or 11 games of Josh Uche?
No, the pick is worth more than
Well,
the
say
11
say you
games
have it
of
internally.
Uche.
So the fact you do have Will Greer here, which does make it odd because you really don't need that extra guy. You got 2 big divisional games coming up here.
Yep.
Internally, could this be Mac's last stand? Where they look at it and say, well, if
Well,
he
you know
doesn't
what's crazy about that?
Can he be traded by the 31st? Meaning Mac. And would there be a takeover?
I don't.
That's the
I
problem.
don't think somebody. The problem with trading your quarterback is if you trade your quarterback, because clearly they don't have another great option on the roster. If you trade your quarterback, you've just signaled to the entire locker room.
Right.
White flags up the flagpole, and then
So then you can't bench him then either.
then you create like a really chaotic. Well, I mean, like we talk about the leash thing. Like he had the longest leash of all time on Sunday, didn't he?
yeah, there was no backup.
I mean, like seriously, you guys
No,
know
seriously, there was
you
no
guys-
backup.
You guys know the rules, right?
I didn't at
Bailey-
first. Then I've corrected myself on air.
Bailey Zappi could not come into the game unless both Mac Jones and Malik Cunningham got hurt.
Yeah. Right.
That's the only way he could come into the game. So, like, Mac Jones had an incredibly long leash, unless you were planning on throwing Malik Cunningham out there and running the single wing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they're trying. I think they're trying to find out on Mac Jones. They're trying to get answers on Mac Jones. I like the way I look at
Hey,
it.
it's the time.
It's
It's
really
the time
hard.
the Bill traded Jimmy Garoppolo away at Halloween.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The problem with the Mac Jones situation is right now, if you're the owner, right? If you're Robert, do you know who's going to be making the decision on Mac Jones in 2024? Probably not, right?
Right.
You don't know if there's going to be a new GM here. You don't know if Gerard Mayo is going to be up. You probably just don't know right now.
So he's untouchable then.
So, like, I think at quarterback, it's like we got a guy who's the 15th pick in the draft. We've invested 2.5 years of development into him. That's the one where you say, no, a 4th-round pick isn't worth it. And I'm ruling out, like, the idea, like, someone gets hurt this weekend or next weekend, and then someone gives you something crazy for Mac. Even then, I don't think that's happening. But, you know, like, it's not worth a middle-round pick to unload Mac.